Have you ever, just thought about like those people in history who really made a difference? Not necessarily like kings and queens, but people who, by their actions and just who they were, changed things.
Well, absolutely. It's so interesting to think about who really sticks with you, right? And so often it is the people who overcame huge obstacles and still, left the world a better place.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of incredible life, that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at the book, The Extraordinary Life of Mary Seacole by Naida Redgrave.
In this overview of the book, it's really a great starting point to get to know this amazing woman.
It is, and that's what we're doing here, right? We're going to unpack, based on this overview, what made her journey so remarkable, who she was, like the big moments in her life, and also why her story is still so powerful for us today. So we'll look at her roots, her experiences, the lessons we can learn, all that good stuff. So where do we even start with Mary Seacole?
Well, the overview tells us that she was born in Jamaica, and even as a young girl, she was just like driven to help others. It wasn't just a hobby, it was just part of her.
Sounds like it. And it wasn't just that she wanted to help, she was good at it too. The book really highlights her natural talent for caring for the sick. Like it was almost, I don't know, instinctual. And there are these two big qualities that really stand out. Kindness and bravery, those seem to be the foundation of everything she did.
Absolutely. And that natural talent, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. The book talks about how her mother was a huge influence on Mary becoming a healer.
Yeah, her mother was what they called a doctress, which, today we might not use that term, but basically she was like a skilled healer, like a nurse or doctor back then. And the way Mary first learned to care for people, it came directly from watching and learning from her mom.
That's so interesting, that direct connection. It wasn't formal schooling like we think of it, but more like an apprenticeship right there in her family. And that experience gave her this like practical, really grounded understanding of how to care for people, which would become so important later on. It really makes you think about like the power of that traditional knowledge and how much those early role models matter.
Totally. And it seems like that foundation really ignited in her this desire to help on an even bigger scale. The overview then takes us to the Crimean War. Can you kind of set the scene for us? What was going on there, and how did Mary Seacole get involved?
Right. So the Crimean War, it was this major conflict, lots of casualties, tons of soldiers getting injured, and a lot of disease spreading too. And when Mary Seacole heard about how much these soldiers were suffering, she felt like she had to do something. It wasn't just a thought, it was like this, like a deep calling, I guess you could say.
And it wasn't a simple trip to get there either. The overview mentions that she traveled a long way to Crimea specifically to help these soldiers. That's some serious commitment. What do you think fueled that?
I think it shows how deeply empathetic she was and also how proactive. She didn't wait around for people to need her help. She went out and found them. And that takes a lot of initiative and compassion,
Right.
obviously. But there's another part of this journey that's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, the book is very honest about the unfair treatment she faced because of her race. The prejudice back then was just awful. We can't ignore that part of her story. How do you think those experiences with discrimination shaped her?
It definitely made things much harder. It added this whole other layer of difficulty to what was already a challenging thing to do. The overview specifically mentions this prejudice, which unfortunately was just like the reality for people of color at that time. But the incredible thing is, despite facing this discrimination, Mary never wavered in her commitment to helping. That speaks volumes about her strength and her focus on her mission.
Totally. She wouldn't let it stop her. And when she got to Crimea, she made a real impact. The overview really paints a picture of all the work she did there. What were some of the ways she supported the soldiers?
So she worked super hard to create a space where she could care for them.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about medical treatment. She took care of the whole person, providing medicine, food, comfort, everything they needed.
And it sounds like the soldiers were really grateful for her. The book talks about how much they appreciated her care, and now she earned this nickname, Mother Seacole. What do you think that name meant to them?
Mother Seacole. Yeah, I think it says so much about the kind of care she gave. Like she was this nurturing presence, someone who took care of not just their wounds, but also their spirits. She gave them a sense of security in this crazy, scary situation. And the overview points out that her courage and dedication, they made her a hero to those soldiers who saw firsthand what she was doing for them.
It's such a vivid image. Now let's talk a little about the book itself, The Extraordinary Life of Mary Seacole. The overview gives us some good background on the book, right? Who wrote it and what's their background?
Right. So the author is Naida Redgrave, and she seems really interested in telling the stories of historical figures who may have been overlooked, especially women. And they mentioned that she also wrote a book about Shonda Rhimes, which kind of reinforces that focus on, powerful women's stories. What do you think it says about, like, our culture now that these kinds of stories are getting more attention?
I think it shows that people are realizing that history is full of diverse voices. We need to hear them all. It's about getting a more complete and accurate view of the past. And it's not just text in this book. It's got illustrations by Aliana Harris. And the overview really praises these illustrations, saying they're warm, colorful, and really bring Mary's story to life, especially for readers.
How do you think those visuals help tell a story like this, especially for a wider audience? I think the illustrations, especially because they're described as warm and colorful, make me think this book is probably meant for all sorts of readers, including younger folks. And visuals, they can really make these historical figures and events more, I don't know, real and engaging, especially for people who are just learning about them. So it's great that they're making Mary Seacole's story accessible to more people.
I agree. And it's part of this whole series called Extraordinary Lives, with books about other amazing people like Greta Thunberg, Alan Turing, even Michelle Obama. Putting Mary Seacole in that company really underlines how important her work was.
Totally. Seeing her alongside these other influential people shows how timeless her impact is. And the overview also connects her to other figures from the time, like Florence Nightingale, while still emphasizing what made Mary Seacole's journey unique. How do you see their experiences as different?
It's a good comparison, right? So both women were crucial in helping during the Crimean War, but their backgrounds, where they stood in society, and the challenges they faced, those were all very different. Mary Seacole had to deal with racism and prejudice in a way that Florence Nightingale didn't,
Right.
and that definitely shaped her whole path.
Exactly. Nightingale had privilege and connections, while Mary Seacole had to overcome all these societal barriers just to use her skills. That makes what she accomplished even more impressive and shows how important it is to understand the different challenges people face. And that leads us to, like, the legacy of Mary Seacole and what we can take away from her life, which the overview talks about too.
Yeah, so even though she didn't always get the recognition she deserved when she was alive, the overview makes it clear that today, Mary Seacole is remembered as this extraordinary, important figure. Her story is still powerful. Why do you think that is?
Well, the overview points to a few key things. Her bravery in the face of all these hardships, her incredible kindness and compassion, and her ability to keep going even when things were really tough. These are qualities that still inspire people no matter what time period they live in.
Absolutely. And the book really highlights the power of kindness, how much helping others can matter. That's what drove Mary Seacole. How do you think we can apply that spirit of giving to our lives today?
I think it reminds us that even small acts of compassion, just wanting to help, can have a ripple effect. It shows that you don't need some huge plan to make a difference. Sometimes it's about consistently being kind and supporting others.
And then there's her resilience, how she kept going no matter what. The book makes it clear that she had to deal with so much, including all the prejudice of the time, but she never gave up on what she wanted to do. That's such an important lesson for us. What can we learn from her ability to push through all that?
Her determination in the face of all that adversity, it's just amazing. It teaches us not to get discouraged, to keep focused on our goals, and find that strength inside to overcome whatever challenges come up.
And the overview also specifically mentions how important it is to stand up against injustice, talking about the prejudice Mary Seacole faced. Why do you think that part of her story is still so important to talk about today?
Well, sadly, the fight for equality and against prejudice is still happening in lots of places. Mary Seacole's life is a historical example of someone who, by what she did and the values she lived by, resisted injustice. It reminds us how important it is to notice discrimination and challenge it wherever we see it.
At the end of the day, the book really presents Mary Seacole as someone we can all look up to. Her courage, compassion, and determination, those are qualities anyone can admire. It shows that no matter who you are or what challenges you face, you can make a positive impact on the world.
That's such an important message. Her story goes beyond the historical details and speaks to something very human in all of us. It teaches us about what it means to be compassionate, resilient, and to leave a mark on the world.
So as we wrap up this look at the overview of the extraordinary life of Mary Seacole, we're left with this, deep appreciation for her journey. From her early days in Jamaica to her incredible work helping soldiers during the war.
She's a real example of resilience in the face of such blatant prejudice and how powerful it is to be dedicated to helping those in need.
It really makes you think. Think about Mary Seacole's determination to help others, even when things were unfair and so difficult. How might that inspire you, our listeners, to chase your own goals? Or maybe to do something kind for your community? What are the wars you see in your own life, big or small, that you feel called to address? It's definitely something to consider even after we're done here.